Good morning to y'all, and welcome to the SitRep for today, the Situation Report. It is the 29th of March, the third month in 2023. And this is where I go through news stories that I've found interesting over the past couple of days and try and discuss it from the perspective of being more prepared for the future. That's the shtick with this channel. Or as I've come to jokingly call this postcards from the apocalypse. I imagine someone digging up these files in the distant future and going like, what was going on in 2023? Hey, look at this. This guy was telling us some stuff that's going on. Morning to you, Alpha, on YouTube. Thank you for joining me on YouTube, on Instagram, or listening to this on the audio version afterwards. Been a little busy of late, so I haven't got one out in a few days. So hopefully catching up on a few things. Obviously been a lot of news lately. Big shout out and saying thank you to everyone on YouTube who has been hitting the subscribe button lately. I appreciate it. I'm not here to get like some crazy numbers up or be super famous, but anytime we're getting this sort of information message out to other people and encouraging other people to be more prepared, I think it's a good thing. So we just hit the 700 human beings. That might not blow most people's minds who are used to seeing like channels of 2.4 million or something like that. But for little old me, humble little me, it's quite exciting. So thank you very much for everyone who's been hitting the like button, hitting subscribe, hitting the heart button on Instagram and doing all that good stuff. Thank you. All right, without any further ado, because they're two different things, a do and a due. So without any further more to do, let's get into it and stop trying to speak French. First cab off the rank today, combustion engine ban formally approved by the EU. This is going to work out well. This one, a couple of stories here that were sent to me by my main source on the Instagrams. Who always find some interesting stuff for me to peruse. But this one is about what they've been pushing towards very hard in the EU, that they're going to get rid of the ICE, the internal combustion engine, those dirty fuel guzzling, carbon pumping out machines that are destroying the earth along with the cow farts. So get rid of those two things, we'll be fine. Don't think about where the electric the components for electric batteries come from in your EVs. Don't think about that. Don't think about where the electricity comes from. Just buy the EV, all right? And we'll all be cool. That's essentially what the EU is saying. My source who said this to me is basically like preface this one with goodbye EU. And I totally agree. I think this is like one of those harbingers of doom that I don't know how you think you're going to operate these nations, this area of the world, without the internal combustion engine. Good luck to you. I hope you're pretty hell-bent on getting the CO2 down, and this is the way you decide it. I don't know if it's the best way, but it's the way you're doing it. Let's see how this works out. My main issue with this, because I don't live in Europe, it has a knock-on effect, or will always have a knock-on effect, but the main knock-on effect is inspiration. That countries like Australia and New Zealand will see this and go like, yeah, we're going to do that. And we've already had overtures of this in our capital city, Canberra, who have said, hey, you know what, 15 years' time, we're going to go full EV. They actually changed the date a few times on this. So they've said 2050, they said 2030. It's like, really? 7 years' time, we're all going to be driving EVs. Not going to work for a number of reasons. Canberra sits inside a territory which is inside another state. And so there's a lot of interaction with the other state, the state that I live in, New South Wales. And so many people come in and across the border. We saw the issues of this when COVID hit, and we had a set of rules for New South Wales and a set of rules for Canberra, and they were different. And so people, like, you would literally drive across one street, because there are towns that border the Australian Capital Territory, you would drive across the street and all of a sudden you're in a totally different set of rules. And so sometimes you'd wear a mask and you'd be driving along, and then you could take your mask off and it's fine. Didn't make any sense, right? Same sort of thing I think is going to happen in Australia. And I'm not sure, like the EU here has signed off on it. And so there are countries within Europe that aren't technically in the EU. They haven't been pulled into that conglomerate yet. How's that going to work when you cross those borders? Is that going to increase the division between those borders, where it's, there is a lot of interoperability between these nations right now, where you can move from one place to the other. The freedom of movement is relatively easy throughout Europe, I would say, at least. This is yet another thing that's going to create division within this area. Not to mention what's going to actually happen with this. And the forethought of this is clearly lacking. Like, how, for starters, how are they going to get enough, I don't know, nickel or lithium or cobalt or silver to do this? Where are these elements coming from? If you replaced every car one for one in Europe with electronic vehicles, how are you even going to create that? That's what I'm curious about. Sure, I'd love the answer. Like, if you can do it, excellent. But I can't see how you could do it. Next, cab off the rank, I guess, pardon the pun, is how are you going to energize these vehicles? How are you going to keep them fueled up and filled up with electricity? Where is that electricity coming from? Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but you already have a slight problem with your energy systems right now. And that's without millions upon millions of people converting their main mode of transport over to electricity. So good luck to you is all I say. I love a good utopian dream as much as the next guy or gal. It's not gonna end the way I think they think it's gonna end. Next one that I want to talk about is it's an interesting one. This was sort of like a little piece that came up, and it was sent to me again by my main source. And it could be just one of those things that you read and go, oh, that's interesting. And I just looked at this, and I went and looked at the videos, and I went and read watched the news report on it, and read some of the stories on it. Essentially what happened is a group of people got together in a Brisbane suburb in Australia, and just went to their local park and made a garden, as in an edible garden, as in they were growing food there. Well, at least one resident took extreme offense to this, extreme offense. And a bit of a fracas broke out when this one, I'll call her what she is. She's Karen. She's a Karen. Is that the right term? Karen? I think, people keep calling people Karens, and I'm not really sure what it is, but I just say, a bitch, a nosy, pokey around. You can't say that on social media. These sorts of people who take it upon themselves to police certain things. These are the same people that were walking around and yelling at people on the street for not wearing masks. These are the same sort of people who advocate for all sorts of weird things, who put friggin' Ukraine flags up on their houses. Like, Aussies don't even put Aussie flags up on their houses. And I would drive past every now and then, I'm like, a Ukraine flag? I'm like, what? Are you Ukrainian? Because a lot of the time they're not. But for some reason, they've got this bee in their bonnet. Anyway, this person walked around and started ripping vegetables out of the ground and throwing them over the little makeshift fence that they'd made. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that was the correct thing to do for this group who said, hey, you know what? We want to create a little food garden here. I think what they were actually doing, as far as I can see, was more of a publicity stunt, and it's worked its ass off because it was all over the newspapers, apparently, and on the mainstream media as well. So it's worked in that respect. I like the idea of guerrilla gardening. I'm not sure about tearing up public spaces to do it. I also like the idea of people having open fields in which to run around on. I like that idea. One of the things that I always like to throw in people's faces, especially not everyone's faces, but how do I put this? The more rotund individuals, your more higher percentage adipose tissue individuals, your fatties, right? Your obese people who are like, well, there's no opportunity to work out. I don't have enough money to go to a gym. I'm like, gym? Dude, you got gravity and you've got an open field just there. And they're everywhere in Australia. There are parks, there are open fields, there are places you can walk around, there are places you can sprint, you can do shuttle runs, you can do push-ups, you can play sport if you want. There's all these opportunities that you can do. So I'm always a fan of that, all right? So I'm not necessarily saying, hey, we need to rip up that. I think if we rip up anything, I would say golf courses. I'm not a fan of golf, but that's a personal thing, all right? I don't like playing golf. If I had my way, we'd build big walls, big sort of rubberized walls around golf courses, and then we would release deer into them, and you could go and walk the fairway hunting, and there would be hunting golf courses, hunting courses. I think that would be a really awesome idea. But anyway, it's just golf doesn't particularly do it for me. If you're a golfer, I apologize. Feel free to go and hit a little white ball around a field and go for a wander. I don't care. That's your thing. I'm not saying golf's shit. That's my point here. But public spaces, public movement spaces, I think are good. Also, growing food is good. So I can't see a bad thing on either side of this, really. But the fact that this woman was so vehement in the destruction of this particular veggie patch, the cops were called out. It didn't get violent, but all of a sudden the place was crawling with police. And you can see that in the video. There's coppers there who were like all hanging around it and poking, what's this? What's going on here? And then the very next day, the council came in, bulldozed it all, dragged the dirt off, disappeared it all, turned it back into a field. Under the watchful eye of several police officers as well. I often wonder, as somebody who has been what I would call part of the protector archetype before, that I have served my nation and I was in the military, and I get the drive to look after other people within your community or nation or whatever size you want to do it, your family. I get that, right? So I often wonder, when I look at police officers nowadays and I see what they're doing, I go, how does that feel? Like, do you feel okay sitting here on a field with body armor on, with a piece on your hip, watching a bulldozer take out someone's little personal garden? Does that feel good? Does that feel all right to you? Is that what you signed up for? Is that what you took an oath for? I don't know if it is. Like, there's obviously a number of things that have gone on with our police force in the last decade, really, but certainly in the last 5 years, where you see this happen. You see a funneling where the intake is aimed towards a certain type of person. I think they've gone less from people who are, hey, do you want to protect your community, to people who, will you follow orders? That's what we actually want. And that's kind of what we're getting. The end of this news story is that this particular group, I want to try and get this group's name correct, a community group called Growing Forward. They got gifted some other land about 400 meters away, so they're going to open a community garden there. So at the end of the day, they raised knowledge about their group, because now I know about it. I don't live in Brisbane. I don't really, care so much what's going on up there day to day. But I think this is a good thing. Win for them there. And they've got a community garden space out of it. So win for them there. But the other thing I want to really highlight here is community gardens just on a whole. This is something we should really be thinking about. Guerrilla gardening. When I'm saying guerrilla gardening too, and I started to get onto this where they dug up a field and started using it there, I think there's some more creative ways you can do guerrilla gardening. There are plenty of spaces that are unused that you can guerrilla garden. In fact, one of the most awesome public community garden spaces that I'd ever worked in was, or like, I didn't work in it. I spent like half a day helping some people pull out weeds and harvesting some stuff. I was in San Francisco though, and it was a disused car park lot that had just been dug up and just left there for years. And so these people just started planting stuff, and then they turned it into lots, and then everyone just grew stuff, and it was just known that you could come in there and get something to eat. Didn't matter who you were. You could be homeless, walk in there, grab something to eat. You'd come in here, just get your hands dirty, help out someone. That was good. And that actually got shut down as well and moved on. Oddly enough, when the developer looked at it, who hadn't touched it any years, and said, oh, there's people using this. This land now has value. Out you get, you hippies. This is mine now. So, I mean, yeah, pros and cons, but everything is temporary. That's a good little lesson there from this one. All things we do are temporary, even gardens, especially gardens, actually. Interesting little one there. Think about that. Grow your own food. I'm always about the growing your own food. All right, let's jump into world geopolitical sort of stuff and bounce around in a random order. This is no order. This is just all separate data points that I'm going to throw up there, and you can draw your own conclusions and fill in the lines between these dots as you see fit. Russia is to station tactical nukes in Belarus by July. So increase in tensions, yes. Are we pushing further towards nuclear war? Yes. Is this good? No, this is not good. And again, the big N word is being thrown out daily now, and it's been thrown out through a number of different sources on different sides, in different mouths, different talking heads saying this word, and I am yet to see any strong voice come out with the P word, peace. So there is nothing that is showing me right now that anybody that is in charge or has any sort of sway on this conflict is actually seriously not a good place. Let's talk about financial stuff for a second. Let's talk about digital currencies, because that's where we're going as a world. Love it, hate it even more. That's probably your options, or don't know about it. I think, yeah, there's probably a tiny sliver of people who love it. There's a huge chunk of the population who has no fucking clue what it is. And then there's probably us up this other end who either hate it or extremely hate it and fear it and do not want it. I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it's something that's almost inevitable now. Like the environment is almost set, or I would say the central banks, the Illuminati, the whatever you fucking want to call them, I don't really care. They've set the tone now. They've set the pieces in play where they are pushing towards this central bank digital currency. And they're experimenting. They're experimenting in certain countries, Nigeria being one of the foremost that we've seen. Remember, I was talking a little while ago about a little country called Sri Lanka that went into a state of collapse and is in a state of collapse right now. And I said, this is canary in the coal mine. And we're going to watch other things fall, other countries fall, other institutions fall around it. Be warned, we are heading on the downward path now. Well, Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, is the canary in the coal mine for central bank digital currency, because they enforced it several months ago. They said, you know what, our money's shit. We're going digital currency. Everyone has to go digital currency. And it's this whole thing. And people, there was a little spike in the crypto sort of world when that happened, because people were like, see, it works. We can do it. And then they had a shocking uptake where people were just like, nah, not into it. Didn't really work. Well, here's the next step that's just happened. Nigeria digital currency transactions jumped 63% on cash shortages. So they were finding it very hard to get people to voluntarily, I guess, even though they said you had to do it, voluntarily switch over to digital currency. So what do? You just take away the old one. You say, hey, we don't have cash. You can't get cash. So yeah, you went to the bank, you couldn't get cash out. Oh, guess what? You best open your e-wallet, and that's exactly what they've been doing. So they've had a huge uptake in people jumping over to the e-wallet version of their money and switching over wholesale to that, because they just physically can't get cash. But that would never happen in the West, right? We would never have a bank run where people couldn't get cash and some sort of liquidity crisis. Isn't that what's playing out right now? Be warned, my friends, be warned. It is coming. just so you know my 2 cents on it, I actually think it is somewhat inevitable that there will be some form of central bank digital currency that will be initiated into our nations, into the West. And like most things, when it comes to anything electronic or cyber related, I tend towards the policy of hiding in plain sight. So I don't hide myself away on the internet and don't do anything on the internet, and obviously don't have any social media accounts. I have social media accounts because you're all watching it. I just more put it openly and say, hey, I'm not doing anything outside too far outside the normal parameters. Here I am. You can see me. So my head is not sticking out too much, as it were. But also the head is not there, because a gap in the matrix is as obvious as a spike in the matrix. When the scanner goes along, goes, whoop, there's something missing there. One thing a hacker friend of mine once said to me, I was talking to him about, this is back in the day when the Onion router was quite popular. And I said, this Tor sort of stuff, what do you reckon? He goes, look, honestly, man, unless you're some sort of drug dealer or you trafficking humans or doing something like legitimately dodgy, like why bother? Like, just get the VPN. Don't worry about the going that route. And I said, why? Like, isn't it more secure? And he's like, well, it can be, but they can't see what you're doing, but they can see that they can't see what you're doing. And that's going to attract attention in and of itself. So I remembered that. So short story long here is that I think we're probably going to end up with some form of CBDC, and I will probably have some form of it myself personally. This is what I'm thinking, looking forward, being more prepared, because they're going to make it so restrictive that if we don't interact with it, we'll be utterly on the outer. I am also preparing for that eventuality too. If there's something that springs up around this CBDC that I'm just like, nah, i.e. like where I was like, nah, I was willing to be on the outer for that. Right, I'll ride that out. And I've also built my life, and I'm continuing to build my life so that if something like that happened where they're like, you either get CBDC or you are a, I don't know, bushranger, criminal outlaw, or some sort of weird fringe hippie who lives out in the forest, I'm like, okay, I'll take that. Or at least I've got the option to do that. But also I've got the option to keep one foot in the game, as it were, if need be. But if that's not your shtick, that's not your shtick. Don't. Like I said, it's just my personal take on it. I'll come back to this one. Philadelphia recommends bottled water after chemical spill in Delaware River tributary. This is just your little reminder that if you don't have some form of stored up water and you don't have a way to purify water, you should. Philadelphia is not a small place, all right? There is a lot of human beings here in, the United States, which you can think of as the font, the paragon of the Western world. Although circumstances recently tell us that is dwindling at the very least. But here we have this very heavily populated place in a very developed country that all of a sudden, hey, you can't drink the tap water. Think about that right now. If you couldn't drink the tap water right now, I'm talking right now, like this transmission gets disrupted by an important news flash from your local overlord. It says, hey, do not drink the water, boil it, but drink bottled water only. Do you have the capacity to do that? And think about something like that happening. Hey, drink bottled water only. What's going to happen at the supermarkets right now? It's going to be fucking mayhem. It's going to look like the great toilet paper shortage of 2000, look like a little tiny blip on the radar, because people quickly figure out like water's a tiny bit more important than poo tickets. So good little warning there. The Australian Latitude Financial Cyber attack. If you haven't heard about this one, this was a huge one where Latitude Financial, they just came out and said, yeah, there was a cyber attack, or that's what they said it was, cyber attack at least. But there was a little bit of information that got leaked out. And by a little bit, I mean 14 million customers' information. We're talking about driver's license numbers, passport numbers, financial statements, all stolen, all out there for anyone to buy off the dark web. If you want to go buy your own information, jump on the dark web and look it up. It's probably there. If you had anything to do, if you were connected with Latitude Financial at all. So not a great thing to happen. Once again, this is a little reminder for us that coming off the back of what I was saying before, the sort of cybersecurity, thinking about what we actually put out there. What information do we put out there? I'm not, like I was saying before, I'm not an advocate that you put no information out. I mean, you can totally be off social media if you want. I support that 100%. Don't have accounts, don't interact with it, don't do anything on it. Use the internet as a research tool solely. Even then, your information is getting collected though. Don't buy things through the internet. You can do all that sort of stuff if you want, but I think, nowadays I find it easier to hide in plain sight. So I just interact with the internet, but I do it in a way where I'm very conscious of the information that I'm putting out there. I'm very conscious of, yes, I am doing this. And if there is a thing where I'm like, okay, I'm putting this out there, I'm doing it consciously. I'm going, okay, I'm putting this channel out there. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm getting in for, at least. If I was, part of this and I'd given all my details to a financial institute and tomorrow it got hacked, well, who is that on? Because people are sitting here blaming Latitude Financial. And I'm like, yeah, sure, blame them. Like, it wasn't great for them. But also blame yourself. Remember that. When there's a finger pointing forward, there are like 3 pointing back at me. You can write that one down, quote that. So that's a consideration for today. Hungary's parliament ratifies Finland NATO Ascension. So looks like Finland's done it. Looks like they're getting into NATO. Sweden, still not happening. So there was this whole thing that Sweden and Finland are going hand in hand, skipping their way into NATO, but that seemed to have fallen off the radar now. And Finland's like, I'll catch you in there. The bouncer at the front's like, oh, Finland, your name's in. Sweden, don't have your name on here, man. And Sweden's like, well, will you let me in? I'll come in with my friend, Finland. And Finland's like, I'll catch you in there, man. See you later. Just wait in the line. I'm sure Russia won't have anything to say about this. I'm sure they'll be fine with it. We're sharing a new border with NATO that is the largest border that they have with NATO. They will be fine with that. Let's go back to Australia now. What is Belgium? They make meat in a lab. That lab grown. Oh, it's making me salivate right now thinking about it. What do you use your magnificent powers of creating in a lab to do? Well, they have used some advanced molecular engineering to resurrect the woolly mammoth.